Hello everybody and welcome to the Gaming Grappler. So before I start this video, I just want to get this giant pink elephant out of the room, and it's simply, where's the Armored Core 6 review? That sentence has been uttered to me by people I know in real life, and I have a pretty good reason why I didn't just have an Armored Core video ready for August 30th, and the reason why is twofold. For starters, Armored Core games are kind of hard to review, because when you think about it, every time you review an AC game, you're essentially reviewing two games at the same time. You're reviewing the mech customization aspects of the game, which is one of the most complicated aspects about Armored Core, and then the combat mechanics, which is also pretty complicated. Both of these systems are seamlessly intertwined, and if you want to properly review an Armored Core game, you have to be an expert at both of these aspects. And I just want to say this up front, for my review for Armored Core 6, I'm not using any guides in the slightest. I'm going in blind, and I'm going to be figuring out this game on my own 2 feet and with my own skills as a reviewer. And I think that's one of the reasons why so many people enjoyed my Armored Core for Answer videos, that I had this outsider perspective where I wasn't familiar with this series, but I put the work into it for understanding what it was. And I also want to say that another reason why I don't just have a video done is that my old gaming PC has finally hit its expiration date. And just for some perspective here, I bought that thing in 2014 and I have been upgrading it throughout the years. We've now reached a point where my old computer just couldn't be upgraded anymore and I had to get a whole new rig, which set me back. But the upside to this is that my new computer is fairly powerful and it's going to make things like video editing go a lot more smoothly now going forward. And just so you know, my old computer was running a 1050 Ti graphics card. Ouch, I'm surprised I was able to record footage for Resident Evil 4 on that thing. So I just want to get this out of the way. This is not a review for Armored Core 6. This is just my initial thoughts and opinions about playing the game. Everything that I say in this video will be subject to change when the review actually comes out. None of the opinions you're hearing here are entirely finalized. This is just a nice appetizer to give you something to chew on while I'm crafting the review. As of this recording, I'm about 70% done playing the game. I mostly finished it at this point in time, but even then, I want more than one playthrough on the record so I can properly understand the game's mechanics. And you will see that in this gameplay footage here. It's my first run, and it looks a bit dicey here for a number of reasons. For starters, in this footage, I'm swapping through multiple different control setups. Like, there'll be some footage where I go from playing on a gamepad to keyboard and mouse. And needless to say, at times, I got a little bit cross-eyed there, but these are the things you do when you work on reviews. So, before I get this video started, please like, comment, and subscribe to the Gaming Grappler. And if you could, please hit the notification bell. The more this channel grows, the more time, effort, and dedication I'll put into delivering you guys content on a consistent and regular basis. And with that being said, I hope you enjoy the rest of this video. So one of my first impressions about this game is how good the aesthetic is. The soundtrack and the visual design of this game looks like it was deliberately inspired off of Blade Runner, and the aesthetic just works in From Software's post-apocalyptic settings. I also love the way that the mechs look. They look about as advanced as they were in Armored Core for Answer, but more gritty, with more weight to them. These aren't just piles of junk. These are the most advanced machinery ever created, but they've been through some wars. And on the gameplay side of things, the gameplay is fast, but it's not for Answer fast. It's a nice in-between. But if you want to know more about that, you'll have to wait for my initial review of the game. And this is just a little nitpick. I know this is not a real complaint here, but I don't like the fact that you never see any human beings outside of the mech in any of the cutscenes in this game. I kind of feel like a huge appeal to power fantasy of giant mecha robots is how big they are in comparison to a person. If you're not familiar with the genre, you might not even know like what a mech is. You might just assume you're playing as Transformers robots, and that's something that always kind of bothered me. Again, that's not a serious complaint. It's a minor nitpick. Please don't burn my house down. It really doesn't affect my opinions of the game. But overall, if I had to sum up my opinion of Armored Core 6, it's that it really does feel like a premium Armored Core experience. The levels are more fleshed out than they've ever been, and there's even some cinematic moments that I would have never expected I would ever see in the series. And the bosses are a clear highlight here. The single player feels really fleshed out and amazing. And I just want to dip my toes into this argument that I've been noticing online. Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon is not Armored Souls. I think a lot of long-time Armored Core veterans had an initial bad gut reaction to this game because a lot of seemingly Soulsborne mechanics have kind of found their way into Armored Core 6. There are supply drops in this game. There's an Estus flask you can use in combat. It's not called that, but it basically functions the same way. And there's even a stagger system similar to Sekiro. And I think a lot of Armored Core veterans don't like these systems because a core aspect of the series DNA is all about preparation. You're supposed to prepare in advance. The battle is won before it begins. You're supposed to build a good robot based on the mission briefing details. And if you get supply drops mid-mission, it kind of handholds you from mastering that mechanic. I get that, but I also feel like the developers for Armored Core 6 had a pretty good reason for adding these features to the game. And that reason is the game's phenomenal boss fights. Like, let's just imagine for a second you built a highly specialized mech to deal with a specific type of mission, only for that mission to be interrupted by a giant mecha boss fight. It would be a little unfair to deal with based on the fact that there's no way that the player could possibly prepare for that. The health power-ups were clearly meant as a form of balancing for these boss fight encounters. They're not random, but they're definitely not mentioned in the mission briefing. Again, this isn't the first Armored Core game to have boss fights, but it is one of the first ones to put this much of a huge emphasis on the boss fights. And obviously, the developers had to compromise for this new focus. I do think it's fair to say that some of the boss fights in this game have some familiar attack patterns and motifs from other From Software games out there. There's a similar kind of rhythm of knowing when to heal effectively and managing a stamina type of meter, but at the end of the day, I feel like these changes are a good thing, and Armored Core has always had some type of stamina management out there. Developers taking knowledge of good boss design across multiple genres shows forward progression, and it's one of the reasons why I was looking forward to playing this game. And at the end of the day, Armored Core's combat is way radically different than any Soulsborne game out there. Like, I think I've played this game enough at this point to note that the combat is just radically different to the point that a comparison at this point seems kind of silly. Like, Armored Core puts a huge emphasis on range combat in a way that most first-person shooters don't even try to address. In Armored Core, you have the ability to fire 4 different weapons simultaneously at the same time, with each weapon being assigned to a specific weapon on your keyboard or controller. And while you're doing this, you're not just fighting on a linear playing field, you're fighting in 3D space. The player has the ability to fly vertically up and down and maneuver the battlefield at a fast pace. And when I mean a fast pace, you can assault boost pretty much whatever you want, and it's a viable tactic. The gameplay mechanics are just so radically different. I don't think you could compare Dark Souls or Elden Ring to Armored Core 6 in the slightest. There's some familiar rhythms and timings and a flow to the boss fights, but otherwise, the combat mechanics are just too different to be compared to one another. One's a slow-paced, melee-focused action game set in the Middle Ages. Another is a fast-paced mecha game where the player can fly around into orbit. Like, they just can't be compared. And with that being said, I'm going to call this a video. Again, all my opinions I've just talked about are subject to change in the actual review. Again, once I've had multiple playthroughs finished and I have experimented with as many mechanics as I could tolerate, my perspective may change entirely. But I just want to give you guys a nice little appetizer, something to chew on while I finish my review.